Blog Talk Radio.
Get ready to feel the rage with Smart Rage and Stan.
And that's why they call me Bad Company. I won't deny. Bad Company, till the day I die. Hello, wrestling fans. Tony Jabroni here with your Wrestlerage Radio update. Saturday night, April 24th on Wrestlerage Radio and WrestleRage.com. The Russian Bear, Ivan Koloff. Mr. Koloff, how do you feel about being on the show with Smart Rage and Stan, especially with Smart Rage bragging lately about how tough he is?
Everybody knows he's tough. You are both tough men. I have felt before how tough you are. I have the scars on my face and my body. Right now I've had stitches in my head to prove how tough you are. Going to find out how much guts you really have.
Ivan Koloff, what about all the things Smart Rage has said on Twitter lately?
This is the way you operate, Americans. I know you go around telling a lot of lies. But even if it was so, what are you going to do about it, big man? You come out here shooting your big mouth out how tough you are just because you're an American, the second strongest country in the world. That doesn't make you the toughest. I am for the number one country in the world, the USSR, and I'm proud of it. I think down deep in your heart, in your soul, this bothers you. Your pride in America, because Russians hold all the major titles. But I say no. You think you're so tough? You come ahead and you take Ivan Koloff on. Let's see how tough you are. This cage is not going to be a help to you. It's going to be a hindrance. Because I'm going to run your body right through it.
A cage? This isn't a wrestling match, it's a radio show.
But I tell you what, we're going to be right here next week. If you're going to be here, how about you show up? Maybe you come into the ring. That's if you got enough guts. If you're not afraid.
Oh my, stepping into the interview area at this time, Ivan's nephew, the Russian Nightmare, Nikita Koloff. Nikita, how do you feel about your Uncle Ivan coming on Wrestlerage Radio with Smart Rage and Stan?
Dog. Do you feel wrath of Russia?
We're out of time. We'll see you then, fans.
And we are live again with Wrestlerage Radio. This is Stan and Smart Rage. Smart Rage, how you doing tonight, Corey?
What's going on, brother? We are live with the one and only, the Russian Bear, Ivan Koloff.
Hey, comrades, how are you?
Did you like that? Was the greatest.
That was a great intro. I can't believe that I was even saying all those things. Man, I must have been eating my Wheaties that day. That was great. I didn't know that was even kept on, that you got that in video or whatever. Got that all down and kept a copy of that. That's great. That's great, Comrade. I really enjoyed that.
Our audio guy Mike pulled some of that stuff off of YouTube. There's, you know, a lot of your great materials on YouTube.
Man, I never went there to check it out. I'll have to get my wife to pull that up because that brings back old memories. Used to get really worked up about all the questions and challenges towards what we're involved in, whether it was the Road Warriors, the Rock and Roll Express, Jimmy Valiant, Dusty Rhodes, just whoever the issue was at the time. It was really something that you get really involved in, and of course you just play it off the cuff. You never thought about what you were saying, just I guess coming from the heart, figuring the character would take care of itself, right? That's great. I'll have to go on YouTube and take a look at some of that stuff. I was figuring it's either a copy of me saying something, brother, or it was somebody that's really imitating me good. It was somebody like this Private Nelson or something, you know, Zukov. He used to do me just like, sounded just like me. I'd be doing the interviews, and behind the curtain, I hadn't started doing the interview yet, and he'd be talking, copying me. And I said, man, who's playing me back there? And it was him. Sounded just like me. You know who I'm talking about? Jim Nelson?
Yeah, we sure do. Mr. Koloff, if it's okay, we're going to jump right into these. We've got a bunch of questions for you.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you so much. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for taking this time. I know you had something to do today.
Yeah, I had a wedding this afternoon. Yep.
Stan,
why don't you ask Mr. Koloff the first question?
All right. Well, Mr. Koloff, once again, welcome aboard. And we've got some great questions for you tonight. The first thing we'd really like to dive in with is, if you wouldn't mind, give us a brief rundown as to how you got started in professional wrestling in general.
Well, it's a dream come true. You know, I had a dream 8 years old. What I mean by a dream was I had seen it on television. Television come out there in early 50s, right around 1950. And, of course, we didn't afford a TV. We didn't have electricity at our place. 10 kids, you know, on the farm. But we ended up, Mom and Dad took us to see wrestling at a friend's place that had this television. Fell in love with it. I seen these guys out there. That's what I wanted to do. I was a middle child of 10 kids, so you can imagine some of the brawls that we used to have at home. We'd really get into fisticuffs and wrestling. And, even the girls, the sister, our older sister, she would put us in our place a lot of times because we dirty the floor or something because we're getting involved in wrestling. But, you know, it was just a dream. It was a dream to be a wrestler like a lot of people today watch sports, want to be a football player, boxer, wrestler, and you just keep that dream, and as you get older, you pursue it. And I was one of the fortunate guys by pursuing it. It ended up coming true for me at early age. Like 18 years old, I was introduced to what weightlifting boom was like, weights and working out. Before that, I'd never worked out, just hard work on farm and construction and such. And I got really involved in it. For 6 months there, I threw myself into it, and I gained something like, I think, 50 pounds or something in a 6-month period of time, and started my training period when I was 19 years old, and pretty well got some matches here and there around Toronto, Ontario, Canada, because I was trained in Hamilton, Ontario, back in the early 60s, and started getting some matches around there. I remember 63 getting a match against the champion, a legend, Bruno Sammartino, Pittsburgh TV. Yeah, so that was just a quick introduction of me getting started, just grasping the whole of a dream of becoming a wrestler, and never really realizing that it could even possibly come true, but I guess, really wanting it, but going out there and working, applying myself, ended up, some doors opened up for me, and I indeed won the Canadian Championship a couple times in the late 60s, and on from there to WWF, right? Bruno Sammartino, the man that I had wrestled 8 years before on Pittsburgh TV, and had beat me up in about 2 minutes. It felt like it was about 20 minutes because I was such in awe of just being in the ring with my hero, Bruno Sammartino, that I was there taking somebody else's place. I'll never forget it, Bull Johnson, the guy's name, and I went down to do the TV in Pittsburgh from Hamilton, and man, what a thrill it was to find out that I was going to be on television, but very nervous wrestling against Bruno. But it was an experience that led to many more matches over the next few years, to later on getting to meet Bruno in Madison Square Gardens in 1971, and winning the title, getting the title from him. Man, what to be propelled in wrestling from a nobody to, really the Apple, WWF, being the third guy to ever win that title in history. It was indeed, looking back at it now, the thing that really excelled me into, the picture of one of the top in the business, even though I didn't look at myself that way. I was just figured I was a fortunate guy to be able to be where I'm at, and just was enjoying each match and each day of my wrestling career. Yeah.
So I understand. Sorry, Corey.
excuse me, sorry, Stan. So, Mr. Koloff, why don't you tell the people that are listening, we're live on Blog Talk Radio and Wrestlerage.com. The people that are not familiar, tell the people how Ivan Koloff came to be.
Well, I ended up wrestling, first of all, as, I guess you'd call it a Canadian Irishman.
Right, Red McNulty.
Yeah, I was given the title by Jack Wentworth, the owner of the wrestling school in Hamilton, Ontario. He watched me, I guess, go from over a period of a year and a half, go from this 183-pound guy that came in there at 18 years old to a couple years later, 20 years old, up there about 275 pounds, benching 350, 400 pounds, and really took a lot of interest in it. Was down to the gym 3 or 4 times a week and at the wrestling school every time I could to get more lessons and train to end up being beat up for the next 5 years from around Toronto area to making a trip in 66 out to Vancouver, British Columbia, wrestling there. Gene Kineski, Ron McLaren, Don Leo Jonathan, the McClarty brothers, Dutch Savage, a lot of older names in the business who were superstars, the Toldis brothers, and ended up getting some good experience for 2.5 years there. Got a trip to Japan. I ended up meeting a good friend. At that time, of course, I'd never met him. He was one of the promoters from Montreal, the brother, Jacques Rougeau. Johnny Rougeau was dual partnership with Jack Britton from Montreal, and I didn't know this. This guy was over here, Jacques Rougeau, and we hung around a bit together on this 7-week tour in Japan and talked, and we took a liking and friendship and developed, and he started admiring the way we all wrestled, and he was surprised that I've only been wrestling for a couple of years. By this time, I'm up to about 290 pounds. And I was very, you might say, gung-ho about becoming a good wrestler, pursuing my career, and he could tell that. He's, I guess, seen some promise in me. Matter of fact, I hadn't talked to Jacques Rougeau in probably 20 years. I just called him here 4 or 5 days ago and talked to him in Montreal and personally thanked him on the phone, for, seeing some potential talent there back in Japan, and indeed suggesting to me to shave my hair off, come into Montreal as a Russian, and I just took him on his word. I said, yes, sir. Yeah, I will do it. And he called his brother, and right from Japan, he ended up booking me 2 months later to be starting in Montreal. I didn't know what my name was going to be, nothing. They just told me, shave your hair off before you get to Montreal. And I remember coming back from Japan, and I had a couple months to kill type of thing before I started in Montreal. So I was, of course, going to get there a little early and visit with my brothers and family around the Ontario, Quebec area. But on the way out there, I stopped in Calgary, Alberta, and wrestled Stu Hart. The boys back then, Brett and them, were just young boys and younger guys that they weren't starting to wrestle yet. And I really got some good experience. And he didn't beat me up too bad, Stu. Matter of fact, went the time limit with me. He seen potential there, I guess. Ended up going to Montreal, and I remember walking in the office just like it was yesterday, and all ears, and as far as being interested. It was the winter time, real cold. I remember they were saying I had to find an apartment, and they suggested where I could go, apartment building, and they said, look, you come back here this afternoon, and we're going to think on a name for you, and we're going to pursue this. We want you to be one of our top talent here. And man, I was taken back. I said, yes, sir. And I was all excited about it. I came back later, and they gave me the name Ivan Koloff, because I remember Johnny Rougeau said that back years before that, there was a guy that wrestled as Dan Koloff in that area, I guess in the 40s, 50s or something, and that he was quite a star, I guess. And so he said, did you look a bit like Lenin, the leader of the Russian government over there, and he says that I think the people will take to you as a Russian. Just they gave me Tony Angelo as the manager to go out there and talk, for me, because I was inexperienced at talking anyway, because I had a few chances to do interviews, but of course, as Red McDonald, it wouldn't work. Ivan Koloff had that broken accent, the voice, and that went over real good with Tony Angelo, because he was a guy that wore like a black hat, black suit with the rim around like the mafia, Italian mafia, and he was real good, big cigar, and he spoke Italian, spoke French and English, so he really got the point across about me, who I was, what I was going to do there. Matter of fact, the first night I wrestled there at Paul Sauvé Arena, they had me go against Tony Angelo. So and then Tony came back the week after, and he said, man, I was so impressed about this Russian guy that I wanted to manage him, and I bought his contract, and here I am now going to be managing him. And indeed, it worked. It worked real good with him doing the talking for a year and a half, 2 years there. He even came to from Montreal to New York with me when I was starting in New York 2 years, I guess about 2.5 years later. Of course, Captain Lou Albano and Tony Altomore, they were the Sicilians. They came up to Montreal as a team, ended up seeing me as a talent, went back and told Vince Sr. about me, and Bruno, I guess, and said, this is a guy that you need to wrestle here in New York. And this time I was about 300 pounds, and they contacted me and had me come in 69. I wrestled, of course, a year around there, and I had become Canadian champion. Matter of fact, in 67, 68, I won it, lost it, won it back, with the Rougeaus tag team. I remember riots up there with myself, Ernie the Cat Ladd, tag team together, and then getting into, of course, New York, and going around the loop with Bruno for, 7, 8, 9 months, wrestling him just about every night, and having good matches, and never winning the title. Went away to Australia for a tour, and got a call one day to come back and to wrestle Bruno again. But I look back on it now, it was just like, man, how things happen. Guys were always real good to me, not alone the promoters that were real helpful, but the wrestlers were real helpful. I guess it took a like because at that time, believe it or not, I was a quiet guy, kind of introvert, shy as a kid, and by the time I became a wrestler, of course, as a bad guy, I sort of loosened up a bit, but they took a liking to me as I was going through that phase of Red McDonald to Ivan Koloff, and they'd give me advice, don't do this, you need to do that, and that really helped a lot, getting information from top wrestlers, main event guys to help me out, and I'll never forget the early Montreal days with Abdullah the Butcher there, the Rougeaus, Mad Dog Vachon, Edward Caponche. Man, I could go on and on with so many great talents. I remember when Andre the Giant first came in up there and wrestled, and later on in New York, I got to wrestle him several times. But so many things that happen go through my mind right there now that brings to light how things were in place for me to go up the ladder. Not even realize I was going up the ladder. I just figured that this is part of wrestling. But not long after that, realizing, and to this day, I was a very fortunate guy. I guess I applied myself and maybe earned the position, but a lot of guys did and never ended up becoming, a champion or becoming notarized as much as I was, and I'm so thankful for that. And to not only the wrestlers that helped me, but the promoters, from Vince McMahon Sr. right through Junior even. He used to be the commentator up there. He used to help me a lot with the interviews because he would, suggest things, or he would compliment me because he's a pretty tall guy, 6'4" or something, taller than I was. And here he is putting over this big Russian guy, supposedly. So he would sit on the apron, and I'd be standing beside him, and I'd be his same height or something, and it would look like more to more or less promote me, and so he was smart that way, and I'm appreciative of all those different things that happened over the years, but that's pretty well the start to Ivan Koloff for sure.
So I can recall a story I read in one of the interviews when I was doing the research to get us prepared for this show, and I read a story about a young Ivan Koloff getting in the ring with a chair with the gentleman who ended up becoming his trainer. Would you mind sharing that story with us?
It became my trainer, the chair.
The
guy that trained.
Yeah, there was
You're talking about in the gym, like Jack Wentworth's gym?
And that's the one.
Is that the one you're talking about? Okay, I wasn't
Yes, sir.
too sure if it was the story about the gym where, I was out of line for sure, but this is before I started the school, and I tell all these stories in my book, so I'm giving away a lot of secrets, but you really do have to get the book to really appreciate this, because I'm not telling all the stuff from the trouble with the law and all this stuff, a lot of stuff that I'm not proud of, but I reveal it in my book. But that one story I'll tell you real quick, but it probably was one of the highlights of realizing that, man, I was really meant to be in this business, because as a fan, I really took it serious. When I looked at Bruno Sammartino, and he became my hero, Butzi, Italy, 290 pounds, and man, strong man, and all this stuff. And then whenever I went to the wrestling school, they had, every Thursday night, they'd have matches there, and people would pay $1 to come in, and it would give the students some experience in front of people. And a lot of the guys that were already trained, graduated, would come back in and help Jack Wentworth out by wrestling against these young guys and, help them, give them some, experience. I ended up being, before I even started, I was in the weightlifting series the first 6 months, and I was, getting really bulked up, about 230 pounds, and I was sitting in the front row with my younger brother. He was going to start being my tag team partner. He dropped out after about a year because he got married anyway. But anyway, we're sitting in the front row, and it was a tag team, Jack Wentworth and Johnny Reed, which was one of the students, but he was also a police officer. They were the good guys, babyface, you might say, and tag teaming against Sailor Clark and Al Bell, big guy. I remember Al Bell was 6'5", 350 pounds, and Sailor Clark was, kind of still looked something like me, bald head, beard, real ugly guy, Anyway, they were beating up on Jack and Johnny, and I don't even remember doing it. My brother said I elbowed him, and I said to him, "Let's get him." And he said to himself, "You get up there. I'm not going to get up there and jump those guys." So I did. I jumped up and reached through the ropes and ran up there and reached through the ropes and punched Al Bell in the stomach. And I remember he all fell to his knee because I took him by surprise. I guess I hit him probably in the ribs or something in the side. And I was a pretty strong kid, young man. I hit him hard. I wasn't part of the show or nothing. I hit him and he dropped to his knee. And I looked around for his partner because I had watched wrestling and I figured he's going to come around and jump me. So sure enough, Sailor Clark coming around the corner. I jumped down, and what I had watched on TV and in a couple live shows I went to, I picked up a chair and I hit him over the head with that chair hard as I could, and he fell down. I guess he didn't know Sailor Clark, if I was maybe somebody that was part of the show and he wasn't told about it or what, because to hit him, and then I reached down and picked him up, put him up against the wall, started punching him, and I remember the boys come out and pulled me off, and Jack Wentworth was there with him and saying, Red, it's all right, leave, get out of here, come back tomorrow, I'll talk to you tomorrow. And they ushered me out of there because I had hit him pretty hard, and with the chair, and punched the other guy in the stomach. And next day I came in, I was, going to talk to Jack, and he was very talkative. He was just very firm with me. You're not to do that kind of stuff, you're not a fan no more. You're going to be a wrestler. And, he's trying to give me good advice. And I apologize and this. And he says, well, I want you to, this is a workout day-to-day training, and got somebody down here to train with you, show you some of the ropes, and before the other boys get here, the school opens up, and maybe we'll give you a few pointers here, so get your stuff on, and quickly, he says, because the other guy's waiting. And they had it all arranged, I guess, and so I got my stuff on. I'm in the ring to warm up a little bit, and pretty soon the door opens up, and out comes this guy, and he's banging, kicking chairs, and I said, oh, my God, it's the guy that I hit over the head, Sailor Clark, and he's got a big knot on his head, and he's mad. At least he let on he's mad, and I started to really get concerned, even though I had been in quite a few fights, tried to prove myself, being a tough guy or something in the bars after having a little encouragement with a few beers. I would get into fights and get my jaw jacked usually, but I've been in a few fights with my brothers and stuff, so I was quite used to it. So I said, well, hey, I guess I did hit him hard, and I was out of line doing it. Even Jack told me, so I guess I'm going to get my whooping here now, so I'm going to have to take it because I want to become a wrestler. I don't want to discourage him from training me. So he jumped in the ring, and I guess he was surprised I wasn't backing down because he figured that this kid here is he looks a pretty chunky guy, a pretty strong guy, and I guess he was thinking, but he was still playing the role like he was going to lay it into me. He was going to hurt me, and he was going to pay me back, and calling me names and yelling at me, and I was watching him because I was going to give him my best shot, but he went round and round anyway, and he ended up letting me go, you might say, get me off the hook, so I didn't have to battle him. But that was a lesson in itself, because after that, my payback was so many times fans jumped in the ring to try to get me, and I guess you got to watch what you do, because what goes around comes around, I guess, like the saying goes, that I was paid back many times now for, I guess, doing the same thing. I've had other fans jump in the ring to try to get me, and it was quite an experience.
So, I mean, you're so well known for multiple things. I mean, your work in the WWF, where you won the world title, is known worldwide already. You worked in AWA. You worked for Mid-Atlantic, and I think that's what a lot of people remember about Ivan Koloff, the Russian Bear. If you don't mind, could you tell us a little bit about what the atmosphere was like working for Crockett, and also, if you could, maybe tell us a little bit about the first time you met Ric Flair.
Oh, yes. I'd love to. Yeah, Crockett was great to work with. Crockett was a different personality than Vince. I think all promoters are, everybody's a different person, so their personality's a little different. Crockett worked it more where he had his booker control the situation, talk to the guys, and, deal with the guys, and probably a good way to do it. Where Vince Sr., for example, would end up, he'd go in as a main event guy, and he'd talk directly to the end. Vince was a very friendly guy, and the kind of guy you could sit down and talk to, I guess, different personality. Not to say that Jim Crockett was hard to talk to, but he had a different personality. He was more business and any joking around or anything. But to back up a little bit, now I had met Ric Flair before that in Minnesota, because I had been 2.5 years in the Minnesota area after I won the belt from Bruno, left there, trip to Japan, back, and I had arranged it to leave the New York area and went into wrestle in Minnesota, and did real well up there. There's super talent, Wahoo, the Blackjacks, and many other superstar. Billy Graham and I were tagged up, and got to wrestle a lot of guys. And Vern Gagne was the promoter of the AWA, and he had a wrestling school that he put out a lot of talent. Iron Sheik, Jim Brunzell, Brian Blair. I can't even think how Ken Patera. Ric Flair was one of these guys in that group that ended up really excelling. As a matter of fact, I can distinctly remember him standing out among all of them at a particular workout that they had, because he was so gung-ho to learn it. And he wasn't the Ric Flair that we see nowadays or even 20 years ago. He was in great shape around back then. He was a big, strong guy. Look, he was over 300 pounds then, and he's like more of a power lifter, maybe a little bit more weight than he should have. But he was so interested in learning And so right up front, as far as volunteering to do anything, that he stood out among all the guys. And I got to ride up and down the road a little bit with Rick during his student years. Matter of fact, I got to wrestle him while I was in the AWA. It's on the record book that I got a victory against Rick back then, and down around Davenport, Moline, and Iowa. And matter of fact, one trip we ended up riding back together. It was on his birthday. I understood it was his birthday. Maybe that was just Rick's way of getting me to drink, but we ended up having a
now, Ric Flair doesn't like drink.
No. I think I got him involved in it. Just encouraging him, I think. Yeah. But to get the rest of that story, you have to get the book. But man, what a guy! What a guy to really be an example of what it can turn out to be if you put a lot of effort behind it and you got talent. For Ric Flair to go from the Minnesota area, because he was recognized at the same time as I was, with George Scott, who was the booker for Jim Crockett down here in the Carolinas, went up there on a scouting trip, and I guess talked to a lot of us guys, stole a lot of the talent, you might say, from Vern, and that was a smart move, because he got the guys to come down to wrestle for the NWA, Jim Crockett Promotions, and George Scott recognized Ric Flair as talent right off the bat, right from these early days, and molded him when he came down here like Buddy Rogers and Nature Boy. And matter of fact, they brought Nature Boy, Buddy Rogers in to travel around a month or so, 2 months with Rick, show him the ropes. They paid him to do that. And indeed, Rick, looking back on it now, just from the time that I knew him in Minnesota to coming in to the Charlotte area, the intensity he put behind it. I remember when he first got down there and he was looking for a place, an apartment, to help him get set up. And he said, yeah, let's go work out together, Ivan. And he'd have me come over to his place, and we put our stuff on and run around the block. And I wasn't into running at that time. And I was like 300 pounds myself. So here's this 200-300-pound guys, running around them. But even then, Rick, but he had played college ball, so he was, I guess, more in shape as far as cardiovascular, and he was pulling me along to hurry up. But it was a great experience being around Rick all those years, not just starting out, but any time you're around him, he indeed molded into a person of a lot of color, character, and indeed the greatest champion, the NWA to me ever had. They've had some great champions, from the Briscoe to Harley Race to Luthez, not to take away to any of the others, but Rick had something special. He not only had the wrestling ability, but he had the showman, the talk. He had that charisma that I think really excelled him to be the top in his era, So that was my first experience with Ric Flair, but with the Crockett's and everything, you could see that they're molding him. And Crockett was a big operation, Mid-Atlantic Wrestling, back in those days, right through until Vince bought it out, matter of fact, and going from the NWA to WCW in 1988. I could see the change over the years from 2-3 shows a night, territory, where they bicycled about 3 different groups of talent around doing these shows from around 3 or 4 states around this area. And I was privileged to be part of it a couple times. For some reason, I guess I always thought that I had to keep moving around. I'd stay in the Charlotte area for a while. I'd go to another NW area like Atlanta. I'd go to Florida, back up to New York. I had 12 trips to Japan, so I just always thought that I had to keep on the go and make it more exciting and make it mean more when I come back to the area, like a more of a fresh guy, but a guy that they remembered from before. So I guess it worked out for me. It made it a harder type of existence, harder type of living, because moving around like that really, as far as family life or not, you didn't have any. You're always on the road 7 days a week, year-round, and half the time never around. So that made it real hard, where some guys homesteaded one area, like Paul Jones, say, for example, in Mid-Atlantic area, which are smart to do because as a family type, it probably paid off for a lot of guys that they didn't have to keep moving around, finding new homes in each area or living in motels or whatever. But I sure had a lot of experience having different tag team partners all around the Mid-Atlantic area, the NWA territories, wherever I wrestled, from Japan to Canada to Texas to Florida, I mean, all over. So I don't regret it at all.
You know, Mr. Koloff, I'm sitting here listening to this to you, and I'm sitting here and I've got goosebumps just hearing all these wonderful stories. And I had the pleasure of meeting you a few months ago at Legends Mania. And one thing that I regretted not asking you, I wanted to call you Uncle Ivan. And I'm sitting here and I'm like, I've got Uncle Ivan on the phone. Is it okay if I call you Uncle Ivan the rest of the show?
Yeah, sure, please do. You know, a lot of people call me that. Fans on the street, like that. I get recognized a lot around my hometown here, but no matter where I go, like I've been doing autographs for charity the last 18 years, Walmarts and Kmarts all over the place, and no matter where I go, I guess they get used to seeing me now because I've been doing it so long with my wrestling career and doing that, it keeps me out there, but man, there's a lot of people, they'll holler across, you know, it gets embarrassing, I'm sure, for my wife, a lot of times, my family, whether we're out eating or what, but somebody will holler out, hey, Uncle Ivan, you know, and across the restaurant or in the store, the shopping, but I'm really used to it, so yeah, by all means. Yeah.
You know, Mr. Koloff, I can remember actually getting an autograph from you some years back when I was a teenager. I've still got it framed and on my wall. It's you with the WWF title, the autograph was. So yeah, it's awesome to sit and just be privileged enough to listen to your stories. I know that a lot of folks in the chat room and both listening to the show live right now are familiar with a lot of your work as part of the Russians and your work with Nikita Koloff and Crusher Christian. If you could, give us a little bit of your thoughts on that time and maybe talk a little bit about how you had hurt your back and worked through that. If you could share that with us, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, well, the first time I hurt my back was in Minneapolis during the 1972-73 era. Matter of fact, I left in 73. I was just starting to recover a little bit. I even came in to the Crockett area here with still taking treatment, ambulatory traction, chiropractic, tried to get my back. At night I'd kick away because I had a sciatic nerve or a ruptured disc in my back that really bothered me. And I ended up coming into this area and, of course, wrestling mostly singles and then tagging up a couple times with different guys like Don Knuckle. And then Crockett, I remember, came to me one day, Jim Crockett, and said something to the effect, because I'd been here in the mid-'70s, late 70s, and then I came back again after going bicycling around the other territories, and I was, you know, wanting to more or less stay around this area for a while, and he knew that, so he was saying, I know you excelled in singles, but you also excelled in tag before, because I was champion with Superstar Billy Graham in the AWA and New York area, and we fought for the belts all over the place. And so he knew that we were successful. I was successful in tag team. He said, "How about getting yourself a tag team partner, maybe like a nephew or something?" And so I said, "Yeah, sure, that'd be a good idea." So started looking at different possibilities of different guys that would fill that mold, and it was suggested. I had met Road Warrior Animal, matter of fact, TV wrestling in Atlanta, and before he even got with Hawk, and he was a very impressive guy, and got to know him a little bit, didn't wrestle him at that time, but later on, of course, him and Hawk got together, and they were around wrestling together as a team, and he suggested this guy that he knew back in Minnesota that looked great for the part, and it was Nikita, of course. And the guy was 290 pounds, and he said he works out, looks real good. He's been a football player, collegiate. And he's a real intelligent guy and everything. And never met him, never seen a picture of him, and they just brought him in, and he was going to be my partner. And I was impressed just to see him. But I had some work to do because Nikita, of course, coming from football, wasn't trained in wrestling. He was a real intelligent guy, so and being a good athlete, he picked up things quickly. But, you know, that takes years of training, on-the-job training, you might say, to become a polished wrestler or a football player or anybody. You know, it takes years of experience to get to the point where you could be a main eventer. But Nikita caught on fast, but at the expense of a lot of opponents, I'm sure, because he used to, I feel sorry for some of those guys. He would hit so hard with that sickle that he'd knock them flying, you know, like double backflips and such. And that was pretty well the way it got started. Just we got him in as my nephew, and I started doing the interviews where I did just all the talking. And then finally, after a year or so, he'd start saying a little bit. Pretty well on the same mold that I started with Ivan Koloff in Montreal and that. The benefit that I think, to him was that I protected him because I knew the ins and outs of the business enough to know that, hey, that's my bread and butter too, because it gives me a longevity here. I've been wrestling for over 20 years at this point, and here I got a chance to give some more time in here by having a partner that would, give me more matches, and so I would protect him. In other words, they'd end up in the ring trying to jump on him or try to beat him up or make him look bad or something like that. I would cut it off, or volunteer my body instead for the situation to keep him strong. And it worked out better. Of course, Dusty, being the booker later on, ended up Magnum TA got hurt. He took Nikita as his partner and Superpowers, and that was towards the end of my career there. I ended up becoming a good guy myself, or trying to be. I was never, I guess, good enough looking to be a good guy, but they put me in that role. And it was a little uncomfortable, but it was such a great time with Nikita, and that era of just getting through it. Had some great people helping, like Don Cornudo, as on the other side of the coin type thing, you might say, because we had been tag team partners together. Brought Nikita in, Crusher in, sort of the double cross Don Cornudo, the Pride of USA, and that sort of really laid it in there to get an issue going. Rock and Roll Express and Nikita was always there. Of course, the Road Warriors, when they came in too, were just added to it, because we went from a team that was fast, like the Rock and Roll, clever, to the power teams like the Road Warriors, and it really gave us some extra matches. But that was great to have Nikita as my partner, and I think it was the hand of God in there. Like God uses situations like that. And definitely Nikita is one of those situations in my life where I was so glad that not only a tag team partner for her to give longevity in the business, but God used him later on to reach me and get me out of the mud of this world, you might say, with drugs and alcohol. And that was quite a blessing on my part. And I look back on it now, it's quite an unbelievable blessing. Obviously, the hand of God at work in it, because if anybody knew me at that time, and you'll have to read the book to understand what kind of a character I was. Even though I was a shy, introvert, young guy, I developed into a very full, out of control maniac, you might call it, where I was not only dangerous to other people, but dangerous to myself and for myself, because of the out-of-control stuff. But what great matches we had. I just talked to little Ricky Morton earlier today, and so glad to hear that he's back in the gym working out hard and pumping up, and he's still getting a lot of matches around the country. and brought back a lot of memories of some of the matches we had with the patience that Robert Gibson and Little Ricky had with me and Nikita. Of course, Nikita, that time being quite what we call green, unexperienced, and to develop right into somebody that was a big money draw, that was able to not only draw money, put people in the seats with Road Warriors and Crusher and that whole situation, but then later on to develop the Road Warriors to even go on to Four Horsemen. Everybody complimented everybody, and that's what made a territory on fire and business. Whenever guys cooperated and made things happen and wasn't all, although there was a lot of egos in there. I'd seen different situations. I tell these stories in the book where guys had jealousy out of the idea of a guy being too rough in the ring or trying to make the other guy look bad or something, or the guy thought he did. Then they carry it out to the dressing room where there'd be battles into the bars, out the street. And I mean, there was a lot of intensity back in those days because wrestling wasn't controlled like it is today. Today it's more like predetermined. You say this, do this, and that's pretty well the way it is. Back then it was, okay, you got a match against Wahoo McDaniel tonight. You got an hour match here. We need at least 30 minutes for this because it's going to be televised. So, but you went in there, and if Wahoo didn't like you, and it being as tough as Wahoo was, if you rubbed him the wrong way, you wouldn't go to 30 minutes. It would, or else it may go 30 minutes, but you'd be so embarrassed and hurt by the time the 30 minutes was over. So you had to be a diplomat and also know your business and be able to give and take and do what you needed to do to be creative out there to fill those seats week after week. And I think that was the difference between wrestling today, what it's become. It's a new product altogether compared to back in our day, because if they just tell you, you got 30 minutes out there with Wahoo, and they expect Wahoo to win, say, for example, and if I don't like the idea, and I go out there, and if I'm able to, Lou Thesz was known for this, and that's why they always wanted to have a champion that could really wrestle. And you go out there, and hey, if I ended up beating Wahoo, come back in 15 minutes, I said, I guess he's not feeling good. He didn't kick out on 2, so I had to hold him. You know what I'm saying? You'd get away with that until the next match, of course, and if the promoter was upset about it, he would put you back in there with Wahoo again, and Wahoo would get even with you and probably take it back. And so it really added to the fire of the matches, and I think the intrigue, the drawing capabilities was so much greater because the fans could feel it. They could sense, hey, these guys are actually mad at each other. Or, well, I mean, it could be because you're hurt, and the other guy intentionally goes out there and grabs that arm that's been dislocated or ribs is hurting and end up whacking you there, knowing that you're already hurt there, and you get hot about it, and you end up suckering them, and pretty soon you got a feud going that maybe it would last a lifetime or for months or years. So it was definitely something that was interesting, to say the least.
So
again, we are. Sorry, Corey.
Sorry about that. Go ahead, Stan.
We are still live with Russian Bear, Ivan Koloff. We are talking a little bit about a lot about the career and the accomplishments of Mr. Ivan Koloff. He's got a book available on Crowbar. Let me just pull the site up just to be on the safe side. CrowbarPress.com, and it is called "Is That Wrestling Fake? The Bare Facts" by Ivan Koloff, along with Scott Teal. Again, Mr. Koloff, thank you so much for coming in tonight. We are having a great time, enjoying listening to everything you've got to say. Corey, I'm sure you had some other questions you could put in.
Yes, sir. Do you want to, man, I don't even know where to begin, because I could ask you. There's a zillion. I could sit here all night with you if you'd let us, and just hear all these stories. Why don't you, if you don't know, how about a couple of stories of how about one story about you and Dick the Bruiser when you guys worked in Indianapolis?
Oh man, yeah. Dick was one of those guys that I had wrestled in and out, seen a lot, wrestling with the AWA because he was in Indianapolis. He was the promoter in Indianapolis, and he also wrestled for Vern in the AWA, and he came up to Chicago, and we wrestled in Indianapolis and Milwaukee and all those towns. And so he was a big star, him and the Crusher as a tag team, especially against Blackjacks and anybody else that came in the area that meant something. It was with the Bruiser, it was always something that you respected about the guy because he was one of the boys, but yet he was a promoter, like because he loved drinking wine. The Bruiser, he'd have those, so instead of beer like the boys used to drink, he'd have his bottles of champagne, not wine, but champagne. He had to have the champagne. And Bruiser was known for that, and there's several stories I tell in the book about the Bruiser, and because I respected the fact that he gave me another break after the situation I had went through with the NWA and WWF, and they were a little upset with me because of how I jumped from one outlaw group and went back to them, and they were sort of boycotting me. And anyway, he was one of the first guys. Never mind them, kid, can come up here and wrestle with me. So he had me come up in Indianapolis. But I can remember one of these trips after I was there wrestling, and he got me booked not only in Florida but out in Houston, out Texas, and I'd come in and wrestle Chicago, and then I'd go down to Indianapolis. So my car was usually left, in Indianapolis or someplace. I was looking for a ride one day to get back from the amphitheater in Chicago down to get down to Indianapolis for the following night to wrestle. And I spread the word around, anybody going to Indianapolis, it got over to the Bruiser in the other dressing room anyway, that Ivan needs a ride down to Indianapolis. And we had always got along. I wrestled him before, but we'd had no personal grudge or anything like that, so it was a situation. He says, I'm going to meet me out back after then. I'll give him a ride down there, because I was wrestling for him anyway, right? So, but this is how crazy he was. God bless him. Yeah, Bruiser. We got on the road. We're driving down the highway, and he's drinking his champagne. I'm drinking a few beers. I got, six-pack or whatever beer there, drinking away and going down the road, and he ends up going off the highway. And he's going fast, 90 miles an hour or something, and he goes off of the highway down this ditch and drives along the ditch going this fast. And, man, it freaked me out. I said, man, what are you doing? And right back onto the highway, he said, that scare you, kid? And he knew the spot. I guess he had done it before. So, he knew the spot when it go off the road. Now, it's still very dangerous to do that, let alone getting arrested and probably thrown in jail if the police had got you doing it. But he went off of the road, back on the road, and he was laughing because he seen the expression on my face. I probably put the claw hold on the dash and was ready to rip the handles off the door to get out of there because going that fast, going in the ditch. But that's just the way he was. Dick just liked, he's a guy who liked to party and have a good time, crazy. But I was used to stuff like that with a lot of the boys being characters, but that's just one of the things. And it's not to knock Dick at all. I'm sure he's done the same type of thing probably hundreds of times between the wrestling and his football years, playing football, I think Green Bay Packers. So, yeah, he was a character, to say the least, but a nice character that I admired and respected. I got to wrestle him a lot. St. Louis, they took me all over wrestling him because I guess he liked me. He liked the idea that I was a big guy, young guy, and I wouldn't kill him in the ring. So he put up with me. But yeah, that was part of me getting to the point of going from my drinking days to not long after that into the drugs. And I'm sure you want to hear about that. Whether you want to hear about it or not, as part of Ivan Koloff back then, I'm not proud of it, but it leads up to where Nikita comes back into my life because I went from drinking to I mean, the marijuana, the pills, because of my injuries. They wouldn't give me no more pills to doctors. I didn't bother going to the doctors anymore. I just get the pills in the street, whatever, and became addicted to this stuff and not even realizing it. From uppers, downers to, oh man, crazy stuff. Talk about a tough constitution. I had just the grace of God that I'm alive today, because let alone the stuff that I ended up taking, but the crazy things that I ended up doing, and I mentioned those in my book, some of them, that, it's a wonder I'm alive today. I should have been dead, if not 100 times, 1,000 times, and probably should have killed somebody, because every night, just drinking, I was driving a lot, so long trips and taking these drugs, and from marijuana to the pills to cocaine later on, and I talk more about that, and really breaking the law, and as far as where that took me, but only to get to the point where realizing that I think it's time for me to bow out to WCW. I'd taken over from the NWA, and I realized I was kind of a mess, tried to get off of the drugs, the alcohol, and unsuccessfully I'd throw stuff away and go back to it. And anyway, Nikita knew this. We had, by this time, 89 rolled around. Nikita quit wrestling because his wife had died, came back to wrestling for another year, and then he quit altogether around 94, and ended up getting a call one day. We had been doing a little business together, remained friends, Nikita and I, tried to do some work together and business, and so we kept that friendship there, and mutual, I guess, friendship, both of us, and I'm so thankful for that, because it's a wonder Nikita wasn't totally turned off of me, not only as a partner, but I guess he all respected the fact that I helped him and, to learn the business, and to be in there for him. And he called me one day anyway, out of the blue, and like I said, I've been struggling with this stuff, trying to get off of the drugs and the alcohol. I couldn't afford the cocaine anymore because I quit the WCW for 3 or 4 years on the independent circuit now, and still getting quite a bit of work on the weekends, living off my name type of thing, but I was struggling with this stuff. I just wanted to get out, be in control again, and not being the person, I guess, that I knew I should have been. Nikita knew that too, and he knew what the reason was. He never got into all this. He might have drank a beer or two, but never seen him get into any drugs like this. So I admired that fact about Nikita. He called me up one day, and he's all excited. I thought he won the sweepstake. He invited me to come to a revival at a church, and he said, I really thought he did win the lottery, like the way he was carrying on with the excitement, and that's what really got my interest, because Nikita was always a kind of reserved, in control type guy, very intelligent and everything, but he got the point across to me. He says, trust me. He said, I never steered you wrong, Uncle, Uncle Ivan. He says, come on out, you got to come to the revival. He says, I got the answer for you. And I said, I wouldn't settle for that. I said, what is it, Nicky? What is it, Tell me, what is it? What's going on? He said, well, anyway, he says, I'd rather you come out and just witness it for yourself, but I see you're not going to settle for that, but I want to make sure you come. So I want you to understand, I became born again Christian. And I says, well, I heard the expression before, but I said, well, I'm Christian. I was raised in church as a kid. Nicky, he said, no, I'm not talking about that. That doesn't make you a Christian, Uncle. He says, the idea that you ask God into your heart, to come in, live in you, and forgive you your sins, and realize that He is the Son of God, and believe that fact, and then ask Him to come into your life, forgive your sins, and have a relationship with Him. And I said, I never did ask Jesus to come into my life. I always thought because I went to church, I was a Christian. And I understood what Nikita said. I said, okay, Nicky, I promise you I'll be there. And I had started doing some good works, I thought, and God would bless me if I started doing Children's Miracle Network, and I started doing that about 1992, and this was in 95, so I was coming back from doing an autograph thing up in the north on Sunday, and there was an evening service, revival, and I'll never forget, it was a pastor from England, Terence Rose, and this guy has got a testimony of himself that was really heavy. This Terence Rose was a hitman, and he had been converted, received Christ, and he was being used by God in a strong way to reach people. He met in the Oklahoma bombing and ministry all over the world, Africa, throughout America. And I'd never heard of him before, but that day in that church, I was wanting this in my life. I needed this in my life, and I knew this was the answer for me. And I really got convicted, saying things like that I'm a sinner, and they explained to me why I'm a sinner, because of the Ten Commandments, and even if I break one of them, I don't get to heaven. That's the only way I can get to heaven is through accepting Jesus, the gift that our Father gave us in heaven, to be able to come to Him, to pay that price. It's just the way He set it up, that if you don't accept that gift of Jesus Christ, that He, without sin, went to the cross and died for us and was raised from the dead, and now I can be raised from the dead, the death of drugs and alcohol, and come back alive if I would just accept Him. And man, that's what I was after. I says, now all this time I was trying to throw it out the window, and I'd go back and get it in the car, the drugs and the alcohol. All I had to do was to accept Him. And here I realized it all. There was another chance for me to wipe the slate clean, forgiveness of my sins, not only the sins of yesterday and that day, but the sins of the future, that if I slip and fall again, that I will go back to the Lord and just say, Father, I'm sorry, I messed up again. Just please forgive me. And I had my faith. I knew that He would forgive me, and I could go on and have my relationship with Him, and He would, because I renew my mind, my faith would grow because I get in the Word, because God is the Word. I ended up getting into the Word just of faith and reading. It didn't make a lot of sense to me, but as time went on, indeed it worked for me, because as the time went on and I kept reading the Word, and trying to apply it, and called out to God in prayer, not knowing how to pray, but just God knew my sincerity, because He knows your heart, and I ended up sticking to that, and He delivered me from the alcohol, the drugs. The only drugs I take now is what the doctor tells me I should take for stuff like high blood pressure or arthritis, and it makes sense. I keep it under control, because if anything, I know now that you don't want to push the extra drugs on yourself, because you become addicted, like Vicodin and all that stuff. I had a car accident just 2 years ago, educated back to the drugs again, and because I was in a lot of pain. My wife and I, it's one of the things killed. The car was totaled. I broke 6 ribs in the sternum, ruptured a disc in my back. I was in a lot of pain, so they put me on this Vicodin. And I knew after about a week that wasn't going to go. I had to get off of those things, because 1 minute I'd be like crying, and the next minute I'd be mad. And I said, wow, this is too much. So I quit taking those and got something a little milder, but it goes to show you that even though the doctor gives it, you got to use your head too, on drugs and all of this. But I didn't have to take them recreational wise. I didn't believe that was the answer to my happiness, my joy, to have to go in and get it out of a bottle or get it, from the drugs. So that was such a relief for me to be able to get away from chewing tobacco and all that stuff. Things that we take for granted that, that we could overcome ourselves. But I wasn't able to do that before. I always went back to it, even though my strength here I thought was stronger than that. I wasn't able to do it on my own, so God gave me the strength, because He's seen my earnesty in wanting to have that relationship with Him. I'm still growing today. We still slip up a little bit now and then, right, brother? But it's the idea now, I know when I reach out my hand and I need help, which is every day, I got a partner that I can depend on to be there to grab my hand and pull me up, and that's the Lord Jesus Christ, because He promises never to leave us or forsake us. He'd always be there for us. And when you have that kind of faith, it gives you more joy and happiness. And overall, you know that you got that happiness and you got that eternity with a God that loves me so much that he would actually let his son, a sinless son, die for us. I can't imagine doing that, allowing my son to die for me or for anybody else. But God loved us so much that he allowed this to happen. So we're made in his image. And to me, I look back at that a lot of times and I think, man, whenever I think I'm so bad, for a long time I struggled with that too. At the beginning it was like, I said, well, God's not going to forgive me. He forgive a lot of guys, but he wouldn't forgive me. Look at all the junk I did, crazy stuff I did. But then I look at it and I said, man, the disciples were bad. Some of them were murderers, And, like Paul in the Bible. And I say, other guys been delivered from it. Man, there is hope for me. So go back to believing that, hey, by faith, then can't overcome, no matter what it is, because Jesus has already overcome it. So that gives me so much strength today. I could go on talking about it all day long, but the bottom line is, without him, there's no hope. And I want hope in my life. I want joy. I want to look forward to something. And without him, the Word says, without accepting the Son, you can't get to the Father. To me, that's what it's all about. I want to walk pearly gate, walk through the pearly gates, walk the streets of gold. And, indeed, like that, we used to do that interview, brothers, that the streets of Damascus will be paved in gold. The streets in heaven are paved in gold. We're promised the mansion there. So I'm hoping and praying that each and every one of my friends in wrestling and wherever I met understands this and ends up believing it and letting Jesus come in their life, forgive them their sins, so we can walk those streets together, gold, and just be able to turn to me. You don't even have to call me Uncle Ivan, just call me brother. You know what I'm saying? So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Mr. Koloff, it is an amazing story to hear you share. Not just, the wrestling career that you had obviously was huge, and that's what a lot of people identify you with. Personally, I identify a lot with your journey from from what you were going through to accepting Jesus as your Lord and Savior and moving on with that. And I definitely can identify with that in a very personal way. So in that, I certainly relate, and I admire that in you, sir. We are going to take a quick break here. We're going to play a couple sound bites real quick, and then we will come back. Corey, did you have anything you wanted to ask real quick?
I'm just sitting here again. I'm sitting here in awe. I'm sitting here with goosebumps, and this is just absolutely amazing. Mr. Koloff, it has been a pleasure to meet you. It has been a pleasure to talk to you the times that we've talked, setting up this interview, listening to your story, listening to your testimony. And yeah, I know I said this to you at Legends Mania, and I'm proud to say this, that everything that you've been through in your career from the beginning to now really, really shines a light on the wrestling business, albeit positive, albeit negative, and not very many people, I said this to you, when the lights go off and everybody goes home, people, the average fan, they don't get struggles that the boys have after the matches, and I think you opened plenty of people's eyes tonight, I believe. And thank you for sharing your story.
Well, my pleasure. I just came back from officiating a wedding this afternoon here locally. And anybody wants me to speak at the church, especially around North Carolina, South Carolina, within driving distance here, I'd be glad to come out and share with them a personal story or officiate their wedding. But it just gave me the thought of how great God is and being able to take the bad and turn it into good no matter what you've been through. I know people that ended up being murderers and back now. God restored their life and they're back from being a murderer to living a good life now, a productive life, and it's so great to see that happen in people's lives, that they can not only forgive themselves but know that God has forgiven them of what has happened in their lives. And to be able to know the guys like Lex Luger that went through a dramatic thing just a year and a half, 2 years ago, to being paralyzed, already had received Christ before this, and him to testify to me that the only thing that held him together during all that time of recovery was knowing Jesus Christ as his Lord and Savior. By his own lips, he said that. Guys like the Road Warriors, becoming Christians, the Key to Sting, Great Hammond. I mean, different guys. I look back at my brothers in Christ here now, that just to know that all the stuff that they went through, that they've yielded their hearts to Christ, to me, it's just great. And to hear you guys, my brothers, to testify to the fact that you love the Lord, to me, is awesome.
Well, Mr. Koloff, we're going to take a brief break, and we'll be right back. If you don't mind hanging on the line just a few more minutes, we'll be right back. All right.
Okay.
On behalf of everyone at Wrestlerage Radio, including fans of the show, we'd like to thank all of our special guests who've taken time out of their busy schedules to make the month of April truly Legends Month.
This is
Pam
and Bob Allen,
and we just felt the rage of Wrestlerage
Radio.
I'm Baby Doll, your perfect 10 on Wrestlerage Radio.
And, of course, the one and only Russian Bear, Ivan Koloff.
That felt before. How tough you are.
You can download all these great shows and many more for free by going to WrestleRage.com and blogtalkradio.com/WrestleRage. Tony Jabroni here with your Wrestlerage Radio update. Come feel the rage with Smart Rage and Stan Sunday, May 2nd and Sunday, May 9th with their WWE and TNA Rage Report. Sunday night, May 16th, 11 o'clock, Wrestlerage Radio welcomes former TNA star Austin Creed. Austin Creed will talk about his time in TNA, his recent tours of Japan and the indie wrestling circuit, and much, much more, wrestling fans.
Let me introduce myself. Let me break down the credentials. Being the genius that I am, everything fell into place just like I planned.
Then, Sunday, May 23rd, 9 p.m., Smart Rage and Stan welcome back to the show, The Perfect 10.
Baby doll. Baby doll. Baby doll.
Baby doll.
Baby doll.
Baby doll. Baby doll.
Doll is going to take care of you.
As always, fans, phone lines are open for your calls at 646-727-2496. Don't miss a single show, fans. Go to WrestleRage.com and feel the rage.
So we're back with Ivan Koloff and Corey. Corey, we're in the midst of probably one of the most phenomenal interviews I've ever witnessed. Mr. Koloff, thank you so much for joining us this evening. We are in your debt, sir.
Comrade, it is my pleasure as the Russian Bear to be on your program, Wrestling Rage Radio, the greatest programmer in the world today. I sincerely mean that, brother. I really enjoyed speaking to you guys and to talking to the people for America. The fans is where it's at, brother. So without the fans, the wrestling would have meant nothing. So I'm so thankful to them and allowing me to be a part of your program, brother.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to talk to you. Guys, this is just amazing. You know, the whole month of April, we've tried to have somebody that has been what I call old school. I'm an old school fan. We had the family of Gordon Soley a few weeks ago, Bob and Pam Allen. Last week we had the one and only Perfect 10, Baby Doll. And this week, to wrap up Legends Month for April 2010, we have none other than, I'm going to try, I can't do a Russian gimmick, the Russian Bear, Ivan Koloff. Was that a pretty good Russian accent?
This is good, comrade. Yes, sir. I enjoyed it very much. I forget even how to talk with the Russian accent anymore. Get away from it.
You know, it's funny you mentioned that.
Pardon?
I remember looking into I did as much research as possible for interviews. I wanted to make sure we had just we could cover whatever we could cover. And I saw an interview with you and your nephew Nikita, and where you were talking to the interviewer and just talking to him normal, and then you slipped into the Russian bear and came right back, and then Nikita did it at the same time, and it was so awesome. It blew me away because it's one of those things that just it blows fans away.
Yeah, I enjoyed doing that. Over the years, I was very slow at learning or being comfortable with it, but I just I got better with it, I guess, as time went on. But yeah, I meant to mention to you, I don't know if I did the last time I was talking to you, but I'm going to be up in Boogie's camp, Jimmy Valiant, and next Saturday for his annual thing for your students. And Boogie and I are going to get in the ring as a tag team against a couple of his students. And on the, I don't know if you heard of that group in Monroe, New Jersey, going to be on the 17th of, no, I take it back, the 17th of, 15th of May. With Boogie, I'm going to be the first weekend of May up there. And the 15th of May in Monroe, New Jersey, we're going to be at what they call the Legends of the Ring. So we're going to have a big fan fest thing up there in Monroe, New Jersey. I don't know if you were aware of that or not, or if your area, your call area reaches out to that area or not, but I might have just mentioned that. The fans might want to come out and see a lot of them. Jerry Briscoe, a bunch of guys going to be there. I've gone on. There's probably about 24 different wrestlers going to be there. It's going to be a night of the legends there, too, of the old-timers of the ring.
Nah, you want to know what?
Yes.
You want to know what? The old-timers, and I'll say that with all due respect, again, I met you and about a dozen of the boys at Legends Mania back in March, and that was the best 8 hours I spent as a wrestling fan, to just sit there and be in the presence of all the history and all the knowledge. And as a guy that prides himself of loving the business, especially those years of the business, just to hear the stories, right after Legends Mania, we did a show, and I talked about this, and all of a sudden I was sitting back drinking a Coke, and next thing you know, it's the Russian Bear, Ivan Koloff, Nikita Koloff, and Crusher Khrushchev, all sitting there, shaking hands, hugging, and it brought me back to being 7 years old again.
Is that right?
And it's just, and I was just like, but to sit there and talk, after the show was over, you were gracious enough to sit there. You took pictures, and you and I had a nice 10-minute conversation. I had a nice 15-minute conversation with Nikita. I had a great conversation with everybody, and it just made me respect the business that much more. That you guys would go out of your way.
It was so good to see Crusher, too. I hadn't seen him in a long time. And even Nikita had shaved his hair off again. He had for a while. Time before that, I seen him. He had grown his hair back. And it didn't look like the old Nikita, even though he's lost weight, with the hair. It's better with the hair off, He just, everybody knows him that way. And with Crusher there, and I was surprised Crusher looked so good, man. He's, of course, a little heavier than he usually is, but he's a big man anyway, so it was good to see my old friends again, brothers. Yeah, good to see you and visit with you there, too, brother, and I really enjoyed this evening talking to you. I hope the fans did.
Well, on behalf of myself and Stan and the people that were in the chat room and the people that we have people that that are listening from England and in Australia, on behalf of everybody, again, thank you so much. It's late, sir. I know you probably you've had a busy day, and I know you probably want want to go and finish your night off with your lovely wife, who is just who I met, who is just a sweetheart. Stan, do you have anything closing?
You know, it's an honor and a privilege, sir, to sit and listen to just wrestling history. It's educational and it's informative, and it's also insightful to hear about how you transitioned from where you were to your relationship with Jesus Christ, and I think there's a lot of power in that, and there's a lot that a lot of people can take away from that. There's so many younger superstars out there that have unfortunately fallen victim to drug abuse and unfortunately died way too soon. So it's good to hear a good story of someone who battled that and won that battle. So thank you, Mr. Ivan Koloff, for all that you have done and continue to do, and we do so appreciate your time tonight.
My pleasure. Get ready tomorrow to celebrate little grandbaby's 4th birthday. Yeah, we'll get to one going to be 8 and one is 4 on the 27th here, and we're going to celebrate it tomorrow. A little party for us, so yeah, we're all geared up, and I appreciate you guys. You have a blessed one, and tell the fans again, if you mention my name, thank them for their support over the years and love them.
Yes, sir. We'll tell them where to find your book at. The website, guys, is ivankoloff.com. You can go there. You could buy merch over there. You could buy his book. You could read his testimony. It's great history. Check it out. www.ivankoloff.com. Again, thank you, Mr. Koloff. Thank you 1,000 times over.
Thank you, man. My pleasure. My pleasure. God bless you, all of you. Love you.
Thank you, sir. You have a great night. Bye-bye.
You too.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Wow, Stan.
What an amazing interview. It's impressive to me to hear the stories that Ivan Koloff can share. I mean, this is somebody who's wrestled through decades of wrestling, not years, decades. So to hear the impact that this guy had on so many different people's careers is overwhelming unto itself. Then to hear how he transitions his own life to being able to give a testimony and mentor children, and I'm sure he's probably mentored a lot of wrestlers as well, and what he's been doing currently with the charities, all of those things. It's a very powerful story. It's one of those things where you don't dare interrupt the man because it would just truly be disrespectful, and I would never want to be that Ivan Koloff.
Oh, exactly. I'm sitting here and just kind of in shock and awe, just because I've had conversations with him when we were trying to get him on the show, and he's just so gracious, and that's the great thing about these. I'm going to say it. These old school guys, they love telling their story, and I love listening to it.
Yeah, I do too. I enjoy listening to all of these guys tell their stories, much less Ivan Koloff. It really does blow me away to hear his story, and to hear just all of the people that he came into contact with and worked with, from Ric Flair to, of course, Nikita, Crusher, to the Road Warriors, the Horsemen, the Midnight, or the Rock and Roll Express. I'm sure the Midnight Express as well. Dick Murdoch, Bruno Sammartino.
Blackjack Mulligan, Billy Graham, Dusty Rhodes. I mean,
Wahoo McDaniel.
Yeah. I mean, the legendary Wahoo McDaniel, Andre the Giant, Jimmy Valiant. His tag team partners, like you said, Nikita Koloff, Crusher Khrushchev. I mean, we could sit here all night and just name the people he's interacted with, and he broke in the business in 1965. And here it is, 2010. He's been in the business 45 years. And just to hear the man tell his story, and just imagine how many times over the years he's told his stories.
He's really just one of those people that you just let him do his thing. we normally, of course, we'll take a break. We'll play a soundbite here or there. We'll just kind of relax after we're going, and then we couldn't do that this time around. And there's a reason for that. There's just a certain amount of respect that you give. And this is not to say that we wouldn't do the same thing for the Solis or for Baby Doll looking backwards. Here's a guy who's wrestled through decades, and Gordon Soley, who was broadcasting through decades, and Baby Doll, who was around for quite some time as well. These are all people that are truly legends of the business of professional wrestling. But the bottom line is this. It was certainly to me, and I'm sure to Corey as well, one of those things where we had come to the agreement that, okay, we've gotten a little bit of feedback here, and what we're seeing right now is that we need to make sure this man has as much time as he wants. Not to say that Baby Doll didn't want to have any more time, I'm sure, and she is going to come back for us on a later date. And it's not to say that the Solis didn't, because we got another episode with them. But with Ivan, we wanted to, with Mr. Koloff, we wanted to make sure that we had the time necessary. Uncle Ivan, exactly. We wanted to make sure we had the time necessary to let him share his story. And it is a powerful story on both sides. We went back and forth all week long, Corey and I did, about, how do we approach this interview? Do we ask him questions about how he overcame his drug abuse? And the truth be told, we wanted to make sure we treated it with a certain degree of respect and honesty. And you know what? We really didn't even have to worry about it, because every question we had, he answered before we could ask that. And that just speaks volumes for the kind of man that Ivan Koloff really is. So, again, here we are. We're coming up on it. We've been on for now a little over an hour and a half almost. It has been a pleasure indeed to have all of you listening. Please remember to go to WrestleRage.com and also Blog Talk Radio /WrestleRage to download the entire edition of every show we have, much less this one, of course. And next week we are back on our regular schedule, May 2nd at 11 p.m. We are also going to be doing a show at 11:30. That is to say that if everything goes according to plan, as it stands right now, we may actually change that just simply because I might actually end up attending the pay-per-view. I realize that the Wrestlerage Challenge is on its 14th day as of tomorrow. However, if I've got an opportunity to go, and I did sell my tickets previously, but I do have a shot here that I might be able to go and take my wife with me, we might end up going to enjoy the show.
Wow, I'm just speechless. The guest coming up, we've got former TNA superstar Austin, Consequences Creed. He invades WrestleRage Radio on May 16th at 11 o'clock. It's going to be another awesome interview.
We've got big things in the works for WrestleRage Radio. It's definitely been an eventful week. What you say?
Man, this is awesome. The whole week. I've talked to Mr. Koloff, a bunch of times, a dozen times in the past 3 weeks, trying to get our schedule worked out, because, his schedule is more important than ours, and talked to him earlier today, and, he was just, thank you for having me on, and just the respect that he showed us to come on our show, two guys that just are passionate about, two passionate fans that are passionate about the business to come on our show and give us his time. Stan, I think, it's late. We need to wrap this thing up. On behalf of Stan, this is Smart Rage. We are done. Everybody have a nice night. Tune in tomorrow night at 11:30 after the pay-per-view. I'm either going to be flying solo or Stan's with me. You just never know. Guys, have a nice night. Thank you for joining us. We are officially out of here.
Good night, everybody.